Each video game genre has its own usual conventions. First-person shooters have exciting, fast-paced action. Puzzle games will have tricky enigmas. League of Legends will have racism and abuse. How's the new ranked season treating you? And visual novels? Well, they have stories. Trying to get into the world of gaming can be pretty daunting. From flamers to trolls, there are so many places that just aren't noob friendly. And single player games help a lot of these issues, but some of these new gamers are still yet to develop the muscle memory and general video game knowledge for them to enjoy these games. Now, I don't want to reduce visual novels to just stepping stones to other games, but the fact is they're really great games for people to get into before throwing themselves into something like Valorant or Counter-Strike. There are interesting characters, gripping stories, and often some interactive gameplay elements too. In this video, I'm going to be talking about two visual novels which are pretty similar, yet handle things much differently. One is one of my favourite games of all time, VA11 also known as Valhalla, and a game I finally got around to playing much more recently, Coffee Talk. So, as a brief rundown, Valhalla is a game where you play as Jill, a bartender in a fairly hidden dive bar that shares its name with the game itself. The game is set in a dystopian cyberpunk world where you'll meet all sorts of characters like a hacker, a news site director, an android sex worker, and even a literal dog. You'll follow a bunch of characters' stories as they come in to tell you what's new in their lives. Now, in Coffee Talk, you play as a barista who takes on whatever name you give them. The game takes place in a coffee shop that you own called Coffee Talk. Each day you play takes place during the evenings, and while you work there, you'll meet a bunch of characters like a writer working on a novel, a hospital receptionist werewolf, a vampire model, and an extraterrestrial. So, both games have pretty similar premises, but the way they handle the storytelling is completely different from one another. The way Valhalla works is that you're playing as an established character. We learn over the course of the game that Jill has depression and drinks a lot of alcohol after her shifts. She has a cat named Four and a crush on her boss. The interactions you have tend to be between you and the patron. There will be a back and forth where you make and serve them drinks in between topics. Sometimes there'll be one or two more characters there at the same time, but what stays the same is that Jill is always involved in the conversation. She has an active role in the stories of the characters every time, either in how she gives advice, or by letting them vent their issues until they figure out what they want to do themselves. However, in Coffee Talk, this is much different. You aren't playing as an established character. In fact, we never even see what they look like. Where in Valhalla, you are an active part of the conversation 95% of the time, in Coffee Talk, you take much more of an observer-like role. You still speak to the characters that come into the shop, but it's rarely a one-on-one conversation. There are generally 2, 3, maybe 4 characters that accompany you at one time. This means that they will be having discussions with each other for the most part, rather than having one with you. There are genuinely times while playing the game where I briefly forgot that I was playing a character, rather than just being some fly on the wall. Both of these methods of storytelling work great, just in different ways. They both let you into the lives of the characters, but one focuses on how the different characters interact with you, while the other one focuses on how they interact with each other. Visual novels like these also tend to give you some serious themes to deal with. In Coffee Talk, there are lots of different races, such as werewolves, cat people, and orcs. It's a fairly common issue that seems to come up in different characters' storylines. Gala and Hyde mention how they used to be a lot more prejudiced against werewolves many years ago, and it's still being a struggle now. But the big storyline about race is between Baileys and Lua, who are lovers of different races living in this sort of Romeo and Juliet situation, where his elven family will disown him for being with her, and her succubus family take a disliking to elves. This is just one story that we come back to from time to time over the course of the game. Valhalla also has a lot of storylines to follow over the course of its game. One of the best in my opinion is Say's storyline. She works as a White Knight, which is essentially the police force of Glitch City. Her main duty is saving and protecting people in the city, and we learn of her horrible experiences of a child involving a rogue White Knight. During the game, we learn that Say was one of the many that got locked in the Apollo Bank after a terrorism incident. We don't hear from her for a while until we next see her with bandages. One of the later stories in this game is actually about Jill herself. I won't go into too much detail to avoid spoilers, but after we near enough wrap up the character arcs for everyone else, we are left with facing our own issues and need to stop running away from the past. Visual novels are amazing at helping us escape the real world into these fantastical, sometimes dystopian worlds. Even though both of these games take place in somewhere to drink and socialise in, and both take place in a made-up universe that is totally different to our own, they offer something that most other game genres don't, which is this weird feeling of belonging in a universe that doesn't even actually exist. The characters are just lines of code, yet they still add this level of comfort. And while nothing that happens in the plot is real, you still feel happy when two characters work through their issues. You still get worried when one of your favourite characters might not return back. You still feel these connections and friendships you make while playing the game. And when it's all over, you get this bittersweet feeling of satisfaction for tying up all the different plot lines mixed in with this sadness that your little experience in this world, be it Glitch City or a fantasy Seattle, is now over. And when you feel that, you know you've just played an amazing visual novel.